Tonight, Central New York's 22nd Congressional District in the national spotlight, the only House race in the nation, still undecided. Trying to reclaim her seat, Republican Claudia Tenney, who leads by 12 votes over the Democrat who took that spot in Congress from her 2 years ago. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of votes uncounted right now. Nobody knows exactly how many, exposing a sloppy and messy counting process across the boards of elections in the 8 counties of this district. Tonight, we're live in Syracuse, Utica, and Binghamton with the latest from today's hearing in state Supreme Court, interviews with both of the candidates, and figuring out what's next for finding a winner in this topsy-turvy race. An election unlike any other that's become a court battle like any other we've seen in the battle for the 22nd.
From your local election headquarters, this is the battle for the 22nd District.
And a very good evening, and thank you so much for joining us from your local election headquarters. I'm Jeff Kulikowski from WSYR-TV in Syracuse. Also, a very good evening to our viewers from WUTR in Utica and WIVT in Binghamton. The chaos in the 22nd Congressional District has left us over a month after Election Day with no clear timeline of when the seat in New York will be filled and by whom. It's a razor-thin race creating chaos for New Yorkers across 8 counties. Democrat incumbent Anthony Brendissi and Republican challenger Claudia Tenney taking the ballot counting to the courtroom. We're going to hear from both of them tonight, as well as a panel after this show on localsyr.com, including our News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan, WUTR's Thomas Fleming, and WIVT's Jim Emke. For the next half hour here on News Channel 9 in Utica and Binghamton, we'll dig deeper into the race that's divided by just a few votes. Well, more twists and turns in court this afternoon. Oswego County Supreme Court Judge Scott Del Conte said at that hearing he could decide the next steps in this count in a written decision soon. My read here, maybe tomorrow, if not, in the next few days. He'll rule on how to handle a number of issues involving mislabeled, uncounted, and unexpectedly found and not counted ballots. News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan was at that virtual hearing today, and he takes us back step by step.
The court will decide which votes will be counted, but that's like down to 12 votes.
Washington is watching this thinnest of thin margins. Congressman Anthony Brendissi making up almost the 28,000 votes he was behind Claudia Tenney on election night. Knowing her lead was reachable, the former congresswoman was first to file a lawsuit asking the state Supreme Court to oversee the counting of absentee ballots across the 8 counties.
4A, 5C, 6A.
The opening process is old school, as we saw in Madison County 2 years ago. Board of Elections workers and volunteers from each campaign together review the signature on each sealed envelope and then each opened ballot, looking for bubbles to be filled in correctly or for any stray pen marks that could void the vote. The campaigns can and do challenge the validity of any of what they see. This is where the 22nd gets messy. When the Oswego County Supreme Court Justice reviewed the challenged ballots, he found problems. In Oneida County, challenges were detailed with sticky notes, but some had fallen off, leaving no true indication of what the gripe is or if the ballot was counted or not. Quote, "You have yellow stickies, orange stickies, and green stickies. I'm befuddled," said the judge. In Madison County, a spreadsheet of challenges wasn't accepted either. The judge's expectation matches state election law, that challenges are marked right on each ballot. Onondaga County's Democratic Elections Commissioner, who's not involved in this race, feels the laws, followed or not, are too dated to keep up with the popularity of mail-in voting, even post-pandemic.
Some of these boards, should have come up with a better system, but we were all making it up on the fly, and with way more absentees and way more objections than they've ever had to deal with. That's where the State Board of Elections and the New York State Legislature needs to come in and standardize these things and fix some of these holes.
A count right before Thanksgiving puts Brendissi in the lead by 13 votes. Tenney's campaign spokesperson showing shades of President Trump's legal strategy, calling some votes illegal from people who are dead or unregistered. Until Herkimer County admits its election workers miscounted. Tenney actually leads by 12. Now her team wants the judge to certify the race as is, but Brendissi's team wants the boards of elections to fix their mistakes and recount those ballots. The judge could also order a full recount of every ballot across the 8 counties in the Congressional District. Some worry that won't allow the next congressperson to go to work in Washington as expected on January 3rd. Jeff, I'm refreshing the court documents as we speak. I have been all night. No rulings from the judge as of right now. Jeff.
Andrew, thank you. I know you'll keep watch of that very carefully. So Andrew explained it a little bit, but let's go through it just a bit again to let you know how we got to today's hearing. Started almost a month ago, November 3rd, right? It was Election Day. When all the early votes were counted and all the ballots from Election Day, Republican Claudia Tenney had a lead of just over 28,000 votes over the Democratic incumbent Anthony Brendissi. She was up in 7 of the 8 counties in the district. He only led in Broome County. But there were plenty of absentee, affidavit, and military votes to be counted, and when all of those uncontested ballots were tallied, Brendissi, after a series of updates and back-and-forth swings that for a brief moment even had him in the lead, now sits a dozen votes behind Tenney. But there could be dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands that could still be counted depending on Judge Del Conte's ruling. This district covers all of Shenango, Cortland, Madison, Oneida, and parts of Broome, Herkimer, Oswego, and Tioga. Despite redistricting in 2011 that formed the current 22nd, a lot of these areas have seen swings in representation in the past decade plus. WUTR's Thomas Fleming explains.
The similarities between Anthony Brendissi and Claudia Tenney are as close as the contest they're in. Both Brendissi and Tenney are attorneys who have served in the New York State Assembly representing neighboring districts. And in fact, the two are neighbors living within walking distance of each other. Of course, they have also each represented the 22nd District in the House. The 22nd District was recreated into its current form following the 2010 census. That's when the old 24th District, which was primarily the Mohawk Valley and some points west, was blended with the old 22nd District, which was exclusively Southern Tier. It remained a Republican district by registration, but with strong Democrat influence from its urban areas. In 2016, there was an open seat race. Brendissi passed on the opportunity. On the Republican side, Claudia Tenney jumped in. She had tried just 2 years prior in 2014 when she primaried Congressman Richard Hanna and fell short. Tenney was elected to Congress in a 3-way general election in 2016 against 2 political first-timers. In 2018, Brendissi ran and upset Tenney by just under 4,500 votes, becoming only the 2nd Democrat elected to Congress in the northern section of his 22nd district in 70 years, and the first to defeat an incumbent in 68 years. This race is already in the history books, the most votes cast in a local congressional race, and the margin of victory will most likely be the closest in local congressional history, the previous record being 138 votes in 1948. In Utica, I'm Thomas Fleming reporting.
As this close race continues to gain national attention, ABC News political director Rick Klein joining me now to help us break this race down. Rick, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great to be with you.
We're right in the middle of this thing, so it feels all-encompassing to us. But how is this playing out in Washington, D.C.? What kind of national attention is it getting?
Oh, it's certainly unusual, and we've seen national political leaders in both parties have to weigh in on this race. To have a race that's being determined by a dozen votes is pretty extraordinary. There's actually another race just like it out in Iowa, but it's without precedent to have margins this close. And the back and forth that you've seen in New York is that has been out of the ordinary. To have people discovering ballots weeks late, to have these counties and legal challenges still out there this late, more than a month after the election, is pretty wild. So it was a well-known race in that it had a high-profile matchup with a former member of Congress trying to get a job back, but it's only become better known. A lot of folks nationally are suddenly very familiar with New York 22.
So the Democrats still have the majority, and really regardless of which way this race comes out, but it's far less than the party did going into November 3rd. 11-10, I guess, if you give Iowa second to the Republican who's certified, but that's being appealed to. But I mean, it's narrow, but still the majority. How big a deal would the 22nd New York congressional district be for either the Republicans or the Democrats to win? Yeah,
I mean, that's just it, is that Speaker Pelosi is going to be doing a lot of nose counting and won't be able to afford many, if any, defections on major votes. It even impacts the way that Joe Biden is putting together his cabinet. The thought that House members might give up a seat, you've already seen that with Congressman Richmond in Louisiana. Every one that you lose is another one off that margin. And Nancy Pelosi knows she's going to have to get the 218 votes to pass items on the Biden agenda come January. So every one of these votes counts, and because of how slim the margin is going to be, it's put more of an emphasis on these two still these nominally undeclared races, unsettled races. And I think in addition to that, it's a point of pride for Democrats. To lose incumbents is never good, and this was a race that got a whole lot of money, a whole lot of attention. It's not that anyone would have been caught unawares by it, but in terms of the symbolism, that margin of only 12 votes matters quite a bit.
Do you think that the House could ultimately end up intervening here?
It's possible that the House of Representatives ultimately has to make the final determination. The Constitution gives the House and the Senate the final say about who its members are, but that would be very extraordinary. And I think the ironies of that against the backdrop of a national race where President Trump is calling on Congress and state lawmakers to substitute their own will for the will of the people would not be lost on anyone. And I think it's not something that the Democratic-controlled House would be inclined to do if they can at all avoid it. It's only been done a handful of times in history where you have to have the legislative body weigh in like that. We've had recounts in the past. We've had close races in the past. That is the absolute last-ditch scenario. I don't think there's really a political appetite for it, although it's always a possibility.
We will have to wait and see. ABC News Political Director Rick Klein, can't thank you enough for shedding some light on this and also giving us that bigger perspective as to kind of what this means in the national landscape. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, coming up here in the battle for the 22nd, we're going to hear from the candidates. We haven't heard much from them since election night. First up, Congressman Anthony Brendissi, as he awaits the outcome of this closely watched race, trying to get his seat back. Stick with us.
From your local election headquarters, this is the battle for the 22nd District.
Welcome back to the battle for the 22nd District. We haven't heard much at all from the candidates on TV the past few weeks, but we are now. And that starts with Congressman Anthony Brendissi. Congressman, thanks for joining us tonight. I know you have a busy schedule.
It's great to be with you.
I'm going to ask you, how are you feeling tonight? I mean, this has been weeks now, post-election, but even weeks and months before that. So how are you feeling? What do you think from today's court hearing? How you feel after that today?
Well, I'm optimistic. I'm hopeful that I'm going to come out on top and be able to continue to work with both parties and stand up to anyone on behalf of the people of this community. And from the beginning, what I've said is it's important for the voters to have their voices heard. This is a race where the margin is too small and the stakes are too high to rush to judgment. So we owe it to the voters to get this right, and I'm feeling optimistic.
The campaigning's over, so let's look at it from a legal standpoint. In another court hearing today, that's where we are in the case. What is that case, that legal case that you are trying to make to Judge Del Conte?
Well, what I've been saying all along, and our position has been crystal clear, is we want voters' voices to be heard, and we are working hard to make sure that happens. There are uncounted ballots, there are challenged ballots from both campaigns, and the judge will be making a ruling soon on what happens with those ballots. But as I've said from the beginning, I think it's important for the voters to have their voices heard. We owe it to them, we owe it to our democracy to let this process play out without attacking each other. And the worst thing that anyone could be doing at this point is promoting conspiracy theories or fanning the flames of division. As this process plays out, I hope the viewers, including those who did not vote for me, and my opponent will do what is in the best interest of our country and protect the integrity of this election.
I may be paraphrasing the judge just a little bit, but I think this was his point, is that to you and your camp, your lawyers, he said, you're asking for a very directed, only specific district recounts in certain counties, and that may not necessarily be fair. So, again, he weighs both sides of it, but what do you say? Again, I was paraphrasing what he kind of said to you guys about going with that approach, that it only kind of serves you to do those very limited recounts.
Well, I think we've been pretty consistent right along. The most important thing is that the voters' voices are heard, and you have areas where you have uncounted ballots, you have counties where there are challenged ballots from both campaigns, and the judge is going to make a decision soon, hopefully later tonight or early tomorrow, as to what's going to happen here. But The position of my campaign has always been let the voices be heard of the voters. It's too important. We got to get this right. And when you come to an election like this where you have such a small margin, I think it reminds all of us why it's so important to vote, because elections can come down to just a couple dozen votes sometimes. And
we certainly are seeing that in this case right here. We wait for Judge Del Conte's ruling. May come early tomorrow, sometime like that. We will certainly wait and see. But Congressman, I know you have a busy schedule. We can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Still ahead in the battle of the 22nd District, we'll hear from Republican challenger Claudia Tenney. She joins us next.
From your local election headquarters, this is the battle for the 22nd District.
And welcome back to the battle for the 22nd, a race that's razor thin. It's being watched across the nation. So let's hear now from Republican challenger Claudia Tenney, who held this seat from 2016 to 2018. Ms. Tenney, thanks for being with us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I have to ask you, how are you feeling tonight? I mean, this has certainly been a roller coaster. It's been very tense, not just from election night to tonight, but throughout this campaign. So how confident do you feel you're going to get that seat back you held from 2016 to 2018?
Well, it's been very exciting. It's kind of like a roller coaster. But I want to just say thank you so much to everyone in the community and throughout the nation who have reached out to us and lent support and just how difficult it is. And also to my opponent, I know it's got to be very frustrating for him as well, what we've been up and down. And of course, we were very excited to be up by over 28,000 votes on election day. We knew that there were going to be a lot of absentees. But, you know, this is a very tough race, and we have challenged each other before. And also, you know, you add the real difficulties of the COVID virus, and then the fact that, you know, Governor Cuomo changed all the rules on us with an executive order in August, which changed the absentee balloting and a lot of the rules. And I think it's been really difficult on the boards of election, who have been stressed and not able to meet these guidelines and deadlines. And it's really not their fault. It's really the fault of the governor for not giving them the resources that were promised in this executive order. So I know they're trying their best to get this done, and I know that it's unfortunately led to some chaos. And it's up to the court now to sort this out, but we feel pretty confident about it. You know, I watched today. I think the judge seemed to be kind of grilling both sides. I think it's noteworthy that my side, actually, our case is always to make sure that we do not undermine any votes, that every vote is counted. At one point, you know, my opponent, of course, took a victory lap and claimed victory and said we want certification right away, and all the ballots weren't counted. So we finally finished, and we're up a little bit, but I just want to make sure that every vote counts and that everyone has the opportunity to be heard in this. And we'll see what happens with the judge's decision. We're awaiting that very anxiously. So I think we have a few more weeks ahead of us at least.
Ms. Tenney, the judge did grill you both sides, both legal teams today. You have actually asked the court to throw out his lawsuit and actually certify the election as of November 30th, which is typically the state deadline. I mean, it is the state deadline in most cases to do. You're in the lead at that point. Why not let this play out a little bit longer to make sure that every vote that should be counted is counted?
Well, technically, every vote is counted based on the judge's order, except for votes that were rejected by the boards. So the judge, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, asked all of the boards of election to give their final numbers. And boards of election, that was the second time, I believe, or maybe the third, that the boards actually all issued their final numbers. And then, of course, these late-breaking ballots came in from Shenango County that had to deal with provisional walk-ups, and those were after the time when the judge asked for the final numbers. So we're in the lead now. I mean, of course, you know, when you're in the lead, and we've counted every vote that has been determined legal by the boards of election and by the court at this point, we ask the judge to certify. If the judge wants to go back and open up ballots, we do whatever the judge orders. That's what we're going to try to comply with, and whatever he needs. I know what it's like to be a judge. My dad was a Supreme Court justice for 35 years in the same district, the 5th Judicial District. So it's a tough job, and this is a case that's got national implications. So this is a lot of pressure on everybody here. So I just I just think that everyone's got to be patient, and we've got to hope that justice is served in the end.
Republican challenger Claudia Tenney, we unfortunately are out of time on this one. I can't thank you enough for joining you. We will all, as you will be watching very closely for Judge Del Conte's ruling to see where we go next in this case. But thank you so much for joining us tonight to try to shed a little bit of light on it. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Coming up, where we go from here. We're going to have a final breakdown of the race. Plus, the discussion continues into the battle for the 22nd. We'll be right back.
From your local election headquarters, this is the battle for the 22nd District.
Here we are a month past Election Day, and we still don't have a winner in that race, so you can't imagine that we'd be able to cover everything in just 30 minutes. So there is more to come in the battle for the 22nd Congressional District and from your local election headquarters. So make sure you stick with us. We take our discussion on the battle for the 22nd to localsyr.com, cnyhomepage.com, and binghamtonhomepage.com. We'll be breaking down more of the logistics of the race, the candidates, the vote counting process. Have a good night. We'll see you online.